All right. Again, thank you all for being here. I'm going to turn it over to Jamie, who is our vice chair of our SECAC, for a welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jamie Anfinson-Camo. I'm the vice chair for the Special Education Citizens Advisory Committee for Prince George's County. Thank you all for being here tonight for the third of our 4 town hall meetings for the 2024-25 school year. Do we have any other of our SECAC executive board members here? I am checking.
Hi everyone, I'm Samantha Dawson
Thank
Williams.
you.
I'm the I am the social media outreach communications director. How are you?
Thank you, Samantha. Do we have anyone else?
You're welcome.
Okay. Well, I wanted to thank everyone for being here tonight. And I want to thank our PGCPS partners for helping us host this tonight. And I will turn it over to Trinell Bowman, the Assistant Superintendent for Special Education.
Thank you so much. Again, welcome to our third SECAC and PGCPS Town Hall meeting. We are so grateful for our Board of Education members and their unwavering leadership for all that we do for students across our district with disabilities. We also are appreciative of our Superintendent, Millard House II, for his leadership. Tonight's agenda, we've done our welcome. We wanted to give you some updates from our January 2025 Town Hall meeting in terms of our survey data and responses. We want to engage in our Town Hall meeting this evening, review some special education resources, and then discuss next steps. Marcy Torshin is now going to give us an update on recapping our January 2025 Town Hall meeting.
Thank you, Trinell. So we just wanted to do a brief recap of our town hall meeting that was held in January and give you some key takeaways from our town hall session. 25 out of 40 respondents, we had 40 responses to the survey, felt that the session was relevant to their needs. 34 out of 40 respondents felt that the Zoom format worked well. 33 felt that the date and time worked well. And 27 felt that our facilitators and presenters were well prepared. You will get a copy of this. It will be posted on the SECAC website. And here in this link on this slide is our specific January 2025 survey town hall results that has a little more information. So some highlights of the feedback. Participants in particular felt that the format was great and they appreciated that sometimes when participants became off topic or overshared, they were listened to and thanked for their input. Participants continued to voice their concerns about vacancies, particularly teacher shortages and individualized education program implementation. And they appreciated the intentionality of the format and the facilitator's preparation. We did get some suggestions for future topics. Folks wanted to talk about programs and resources outside of the schools, technology and educational apps or applications, and in-person special. Folks expressed a desire for in-person special education town halls. So every survey we try to end with something to celebrate. And this time it was something to celebrate for this school year. And we chose 4 of those that particularly stood out. My son and our family have made it through the transition to high school and we're settled in. And that was harder than they expected it to be. We had someone who also talked about celebrating the improvements that PGCPS is trying to make, talked about making progress and feeling better about the student self as a person, and that's seen at home and at school. And someone else celebrated their child's success, being on target with education and currently head of the class. All right, so I'm going to turn it back over to Trinell Bowman, who's going to start us with the town hall meeting data.
I do see that we have board member Bruiser Schroeder in our virtual room, so I wanted to give her an opportunity to bring greetings.
Oh, thank you so much, Ms. Bowman. Hi, everyone. I'm Pamela Boozer Struther, the District 3 Board of Education member. I've been with the board for the last 6 years and have really appreciated the engagement and growth in the programming and opportunities to connect here in Zoom with our special education team and our families. And I'm here to listen and participate. And as always, if you ever need to reach me, please feel free to reach out directly. But I look forward to the rest of the evening. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So for our January meeting, this is just some data around the number of individuals that registered for the town hall, 327. We had 174 attendees. There were 40 questions received. There were 11 questions that did that required direct follow-up from PGCPS staff. We did answer 17 questions at the town hall. And thank you all so much. Those of you who were with us provided 37 recommendations that will be going to our SECAC board to be included in the final report. Please note that the questions and answers will be released within probably by the end of the week, no later than Monday. They are going through a final review. We did combine the October town hall questions and the January town hall questions into one document. And as soon as those responses are finalized, they will be shared on both our SECAC listserv as well as our family support listserv, and then posted on our website. We want to continue to provide you updates based on our parent advocacy and recommendations that was shared with us in spring of 2024 with our Board of Education members and Superintendent House. So I'm just going to highlight some updates. In terms of integrating our students with disabilities into leadership opportunities, we continue to focus on that. As we work through our Students with Disabilities Equity Focus this year, we are continuing to encourage schools to ensure that students with disabilities are being included in extracurricular activities, and also giving us an opportunity to see where there are some areas that we also need to improve. So that's ongoing. As you can see, the recommendation was to conduct 4 town hall meetings. We're at our 3rd town hall meeting for the year with our SECAC group, and we have 1 more to go on May 27th. So that continues to be in process. Another recommendation was to address the inadequacies of professional learning and to really look at the professional learning that we provide across the district. And so there are trainings that were required for this school year that are listed on this slide. This continues to be ongoing as we monitor completion as new staff members are onboarded into PGCPS. On the next slide are the optional trainings that are ongoing. I also wanted to share with you all that we did make a request in January to increase the number of daytime trainings that are offered for special education, and I'm happy to report that that proposal was approved. And so we have increased the number of in-person and virtual trainings during the school day to our special education team members, as well as general educators and related service providers across our district. Again, this is another slide of additional trainings. We're in the process of looking to see what we will require for 25-26, and that will be forthcoming. Recommendation 4 was to establish a work group for parents so that they can engage in the special ed process as it relates to special education programming and behavior management processes. So this is ongoing as we work continuously with our parents based on a variety of special ed initiatives, activities, and strategic plan work groups. Our most recent work group that we looked at was our root cause analysis around disproportionality. And we did engage some of our families as stakeholders in that work as we continue to look at our disproportionality data and ways that we can improve around our disproportionate practices. 5A was to collect data about experiences and do a public-facing audit on special education programs and how those programs interface with specialty programs across our district. So we are taking kind of a 2-pronged approach here. One, we have Hanover Research that will conduct interviews with parents, teachers, and principals in preparation for the 2.0 strategic plan. So we did use that data to make updates to the final strategic plan that was released. The other thing that Hanover and our Strategic Planning and Resource Management Office will be doing is conducting additional parent interviews and focus groups. Our Strategic Planning and Resource Management Office is in a process of engaging parents of students with disabilities to really look at our climate and culture data and to provide recommendations as we prepare to release that survey for next year. We have released our parent surveys. As you know, those are completed. And at our last town hall, that'll be one of the data points that we will share with you in terms of our cumulative data and what the release of those surveys are showing us. We also continue to work with our Family Support Center, and one of the recommendations was to create a toolkit. That toolkit has been released, so that action item is completed. Number 7 was to revise policies and procedures that limited, delayed, or prevented students who were suspected of having a disability. So one of the things that we are in the process of releasing is our Child Find Bulletin that gives information around suspected disability and the process that we should follow. We did hold off releasing that through a final review because there was some information that was shared at both the October and January meeting that we thought was important to include in that particular bulletin that wasn't included before. And so we're going through a final legal sufficiency review, and that will be released sometime this spring. We also worked with our student services, Department of Student Services, to really clarify counseling services and how they are provided to our students. And so that piece is also completed. Recommendation number 8 was to look at our resources for behavioral health in our educational setting and how we could support our students. And so we have worked hard this year with our Equity, Diversity, and Belonging Office to really focus on students and staff perspectives and our equity focus of students with disabilities. We've also engaged our strategic plan to make sure that we're looking at support for our students through a behavioral health perspective. And then we continue, you'll hear a little bit more about that today, to engage Hazel Health and other mental health resources in our district to support our students. Number 9 was to consider specialized instruction for or specialized education of twice exceptional students. So we are focused on that as part of our blueprint, Pillar 4. And we did have a training module that was released this year for our staff to complete around twice exceptional. And in talking with our twice exceptional resource teacher, we know that we have seen an uptick of students being identified for twice exceptional services. They did go on the road, so to speak, and met with our psychologists, our professional school counselors, our special education chairs and coordinators throughout the district. And we believe that based on those trainings and that work that they've done this year, that we do see more students that are being referred. And that is a data point that I will be able to share at a later time. Recommendation 2 is really looking at our students as they participate in CTE and specialty programs. So we did do a marketing campaign for each quarter of the school year around our CTE and increasing those students. And then this year, we also have been meeting with our Department of Specialty Programs and the Arts to really look at a marketing and recruitment campaign for next school year. And then one highlight that I will share is during the audition process, we did have special ed staff that was on site on those Saturdays to actually support our students throughout the tryout period. And then we did update our CSI data dashboard on the website to reflect how you can access students with disability data. And now I'm going to turn it over to David Reese that's going to go over our town hall meeting structure.
Good evening to everyone. Again, my name is David Reese. Thank you all for being here for our 3rd town hall. And my role right now is to kind of overview the structure of this town hall for you all. But before we move to the next slide, I know that for some of you, this might be your first time coming to the town hall series. And so you might have come with some expectations around what you can share. we're going to have a very specific focus for this town hall. However, if you have specific needs that you want to discuss about your child, your student, we're going to make sure that we provide you with the appropriate link where you can have those specific concerns addressed. And so I know some of you are driving and people have different ways of engaging. So I'm going to thank you, Marcy, for dropping that in the chat. I'm going to kind of go through some slides here to kind of set the tone, and then we're going to get into some really good information and have some interaction. So tonight's town hall will focus on a very important topic: socio-emotional behavior needs of students with disabilities. We have organized to structure this town hall meeting as a collaborative work session, in order to receive your feedback on what strategies our school system should consider to ensure the socio-emotional and behavioral needs of students are met. And because you are families and caregivers, you are uniquely positioned to give us feedback around what you think would work best to support your students and your children. We will have designated note takers for the town hall meeting, and throughout the series of town hall meetings, SECAC will use this information to be included in a comprehensive report that will be provided to PGCPS at the end of the year. If at any time you want to provide recommendations that are written to us, please send them to jhflc.familysupport@pgcps.org. So jhflc.familyysupport@pgcps.org, and we drop that in the chat. Following the first and second town hall meetings that we had, the Department of Special Education looked at a lot of feedback from folks, and it was clear that you all, and we also looked at feedback in the survey after the town hall and the calls that we received at the Family Support Center. And through all of that data analysis, we identified 2 areas where we would focus the town halls this year. So the top 2 themes that we identified were related to the implementation and adherence to students' IEPs. And that's what we talked about last time in January. And we committed to using this month's meeting to talk about the socio-emotional and behavioral concerns. So we really wanted to make sure that we got your feedback and that we're responding to your request in this format. So in collaboration with the SECAC board, today's town hall topic will address the socio-emotional and behavioral needs of students in PGCPS. A few norms. We can go back 1 slide. All right. I'm using my mind to try to make the slides move where I want them to go. Okay, so we ask that you please use titles rather than individual names of anyone if you're referring to somebody in your comment. So, for example, you might not say, that David Reese. You would say the director or the director from the Office of Equity, so that we're not calling people's names out explicitly. And we ask that we be respectful and refrain from using vulgar or disrespectful remarks, inappropriate language, or making personal attacks against anyone. Now, we can say hard things, we can speak our truths and speak from our experience, but we want to make sure that we're not doing so in a vulgar way. And if norms are not followed, which we haven't had a real issue with, we just want people to know that we might mute you or after a consultation, remove you from the meeting, but we're not expecting to have any of that happen tonight, this evening. Again, please refrain from discussing your specific student case. A lot of this is about the confidentiality of your student. This meeting is being recorded. And if you have concerns about your child's specific case, we dropped in the chat earlier the parent giver contact follow-up request form, and then the appropriate people from the Department of Special Education will reach out to you and make sure that you have your needs met. We appreciate your adherence to the guidelines and making sure that this is another smooth night for us. Okay, so this is how this is going to work. If this is your second time, if you came last time, you experienced the problem of practice consultancy model. And for many of us, that was a new way of engaging. So we're doing the same thing this time. But if you're new, I want to kind of lay out how this process works so that everybody understands how they will participate, when we are listening, and then when we can use the chat feature or raise our hands or come off mute and then share so that everybody can hear our perspective. Here's how it works. The problem of practice consultancy will help PGCPS staff expand their thinking, our thinking, and get new ideas to bring to a particular and concrete dilemma by tapping the knowledge and experience of the participants. And I can't underscore how important that is. You all are knowledgeable and have lots of experiences around the topic that will help inform our next steps. We really want to do better in PGCPS about truly being in partnership with families, and that starts with listening to what you have to say and taking your advice into consideration for our next steps. So we have a team of people today who will share a problem of practice question, and they're going to give us some data that lets us know why this problem is a dilemma. Then we'll move into a part of the presentation where you all will get to ask questions pertaining to the dilemma. So this isn't really a time to kind of talk about how you feel or what you think we should do, but just to ask questions to get more knowledge and information. And then that is when the meat of the moment happens, when you all will get to have conversation out loud with all of us and give us some recommendations and next steps. Last, the presenting team, who'll be listening to your recommendations, will talk about what their reflections are based off of what you heard, and perhaps give us a high-level response to what next steps might look like for the school system. And here's the question. What strategies should PGCPS consider to address the socio-emotional and behavioral needs of students with disabilities? That's the framing question for today. That's what our team is going to present on and give us some context around. Remember, you have your own lived experience with this topic, so you're coming in with a lot of valuable information, and we can't wait to hear from you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the presentation team who will introduce themselves, and they're going to have 10 minutes, and I'm timing with my timer, to give us an overview of the dilemma. Presentation team, your floor.
So good evening. My name is Michelle Tucker. I am the supervisor of the Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervening Services Office. And I will pass it on to, well, can I do my slide, and then as our slides come up, we introduce ourselves just for sake of time?
That
Is
works
that good, Dave?
perfectly.
Okay, so I'll start off because the work of the office that I'm in, we are looking to reduce disproportionate practices. So some of the data that I'm sharing in this first slide are the disciplinary removals, or in terms of suspensions, of students with disabilities for our students who have IEPs. So the numbers reflected here are students with IEPs. For the 2 years that are on screen for SY, or school year 22-23 and school year 23-24, just to kind of put it in context, students without IEP, so our students that do not have individualized education programs, they make up 83% of the students who were suspended in those 2 years. And quite consistently across those 2 years, students with IEPs make up about 17% of the students that receive suspensions in response to their behaviors. About 1% of that make up our students in pre-K with IEPs. We have 7% in one school year, 6% in another school year are students in elementary schools with IEPs. And then you'll see for our middle schoolers and our high schoolers make up the majority of our students with IEPs who receive suspensions in response to their behaviors. And you'll see for both middle school and high school in the 22-23 school year made up about 46% in each category. In the 23-24 school year, it shifted just a bit, with our high schoolers receiving 49% of the suspensions when we look at the number of students with IEPs who are suspended. At the bottom, you'll see the top 5 infractions, and these are the top 5 infractions for students with disabilities. So based on the incident numbers, the incidents that resulted in suspension. So you'll see quite consistently it's the same 5 issues that are coming up that end up in a suspension for our students with IEPs. physical attack on other students, fighting with other students. So between 1 and 2, physical attack is a one-way situation. Fighting the physical impact goes both ways. Attack on an adult, possession, use, or distribution of drugs, and then in 2022-23 school year, number 5 was threat to adult. In the 23-24 school year, it was threat to student. And if we look at the next slide, we're sharing a breakdown of another behavior response that staff use in result to students with IEPs, and that is physical restraint. And when I say physical restraint, I'm defining as the personal restriction. So body of a staff member is used to immobilize a student or reduce the ability of that student to move their torso, arms, legs, or head freely during school hours when there's an emergency situation, and physical restraint is necessary to protect the student or other person from imminent serious physical harm after less intrusive non-physical interventions have failed or been deemed inappropriate. So again, I wanted to give some context there, and you'll see students without IEPs made up about 8 of the restraints that were reported during last school year. Students with IEPs made up of 76 of the restraints that were reported for last school year. And then you'll see, based on disability, the makeup with our highest number of restraints, restraint incidents involved our students with autism, students with multiple disabilities, emotional disabilities, kind of rounded out the top 3. And when we look at the school settings in which those restraint incidents occurred, elementary school had the highest number, 73 of the restraints, and then you see early childhood, high school, and middle school make up the rest of those restraints.
All right, thank you, Miss Shell. So I think I might have introduced myself earlier, but I'll do it again just in case I didn't. I'm Marcy Torshin. I'm with the Family Support Center. And we wanted to get a little bit of information from you guys. So we're going to have a couple of polls. If your student has an IEP team, the first poll, I'm launching it right now, and you should be able to answer it on your phone or on your computer. Is the IEP team considered my student's behavioral needs? So we'll give about a minute for everyone to answer that question. So I see some great, as we're waiting for the poll to end, I do see some great questions coming through in the chat. Just remember that we're going to have a designated section for those questions to come through. So hang on to your questions and we will get to them during that section. All right. We are going. So it looks like about 20% strongly agreed, 36% agreed, 32% were neutral, and 12% agreed. So I'm going to turn it back over to the presentation team to talk about IEP behavior considerations.
So that's coming back to me because in our office, we also do reviews of IEP records looking for those behavior considerations. So thank you for that poll question in terms of how the parents who are online feel about the IEP considerations for their child. So when we look at the audit results from when my team audit records or monitor records, review records for looking at whether or not the team documented their review or their consideration of the behavior support needs of students during the IEP process. In addition, we look at the documentation that teams have around the functional behavioral assessment and behavior intervention plan process. So you're seeing the trend data over the previous 4 school years. And when it comes to considering or documentation, and I keep want to say documentation of the consideration of the students' IEP needs, you're seeing that we started going up, and we're consistently in the 90% range when we look at those records that the teams have actually considered the behavior support needs of students during the IEP process. Where you see that the data is kind of fluctuating and not necessarily staying in an upward trend is when we look at the needs for functional behavioral assessments, that documentation in the IEP, whether or not the team discussed it, whether or not the team said yay or nay to if the student needed a functional behavioral assessment, if the student needed a behavior intervention plan, even looking at whether or not the behavior intervention plan was actually developed after the team decided that the student did need one. If the team included IEP goals in the student's IEP around behavior after identifying behavior support needs, in addition to any supplementary aids and services, whether or not the IEP is reflecting those support needs. And then that last measure there is whether or not the team aligned what was in the behavior intervention plan to the IEP goals, so that we're seeing some alignment with those processes. Is it that we had a separate IEP, then when the team decided to go the route of functional behavioral assessment and BIP, that they go back and make sure that their 2 documents were working together and linked together. So you'll see that data there.
Good afternoon. My name is Liz Faison. I'm the Associate Superintendent for Student Services. This is my first time at SECAC, so it's great to interact with you all tonight. I want to talk a little bit about behavior threat assessment. So Ms. Tucker talked about the assessments and FBAs that are done for students. The behavior threat assessments are conducted, however, when a student's behavior may pose as a threat or a safety to the school or to staff members in the workplace. COMAR states that we are to ensure as a school system that we have a team and a way of assessing a student's need and then providing an intervention, and certainly working with our other partners in our school system, safety and security, our counselors, to also ensure that we know the level of the threat for the student, and then provide documented interventions to assist the student and the school. And so to date, we have conducted 67 behavior threat assessments. There is a school-based team, and then there's also a district level behavior threat assessment team that meets to provide instruction or training or technical assistance, and to talk about some of the hard cases that have occurred during the school year, to make sure that schools have additional support when they may have ongoing student concerns. And so almost 3 years ago, we began Hazel Health. It was gifted to us through the health department through a grant. And so we started off just with our secondary schools for the first year, and then we moved to our incorporating our elementary schools. And so we've had, this is the second or third year that Hazel has been in our schools. It allows our students to receive both medical assistance through telehealth and teletherapy, both while at school, or a family can receive services as early as 7 a.m. in the morning through 7 p.m. In the afternoon. And so to date, from July 1 until March 6th, we've had 1,800 counseling sessions conducted for 445 students. When we last spoke with Hazel, they were very pleased with the fact that Prince George's County Public Schools seems to be trending and pacing higher than other school districts with referrals. So this year we've had almost 800 referrals from the beginning of the school year. Additionally, students are coming to therapy for school-related issues, for anxiety, for challenging behaviors, family concerns. These are just some of the reasons that our students come to the teletherapy space. One neat thing that we believe is neat is that 40% of our referrals are coming from families. And this is above the national average. So when we talk about Hazel Health and teletherapy being utilized, it is being widely utilized and increasingly from our families. Since September, about 40% of our visits have been at school, and the other 60% of students who are receiving services have chosen to do so from home. And so we're very happy with the way that Hazel and mental health supports have been provided through this option, so that families who don't want necessarily a face-to-face clinician can do so via screen, either at home or at school.
So we did want to address some of the things that, or speak to some of the things that we're doing currently to address the concerns we have with maybe some of our data. So the office in which I lead, we are specifically designated to address the disproportionate practices in the district. And the support that we provide specifically to schools is, kind of for all schools across the district. We provide professional development on providing students behavior supports. Across the district, we're utilizing an emotional disability eligibility tool to decrease our disproportionality around ED identifications for students. In addition to, we have a team of folks that provide consultations directly to schools via virtually and on site. For a select number of schools, we have staff that are working in those schools. So with our schools with the highest rate of disproportionate suspensions of students with IEPs, or the highest rate of disproportionate identifications of students with emotional disabilities, that we have staff working in those buildings, providing coaching to teachers, professional development. And we also have some mental health providers, social workers that are working with specific cases and doing parent training. And then for select students in those schools, we have our staff working directly to provide SEL instruction that's above and beyond what the school is already doing. So we do more intensive tier 3 type of level SEL instruction, as well as mental health services. So our social workers, our school psychologists are providing, again, additional counseling service above and beyond what is being provided by the school as a whole to specific cases, as well as those cases that our comprehensive response team from central office goes out and they are a part of those processes at those schools. Some additional things that we're doing, if you go to the next slide for me, Marcy, when we look at our student behavior support teams. So on the last slide, when I spoke to training at all schools, each school for, I want to say, the past 3 to 4 years, the administrator identifies a set of individuals in their building, at least 5 members. They can identify as many as they want, but at least 5 members have to be identified. And we build capacity in those staff members through a series of trainings so that their ability to support students who may go into a behavior crisis, or their ability to be a part of problem-solving teams in their school building is built up through that training and coaching. And we do that in an attempt to give the schools and school teams other strategies other than suspension or restraint in order to respond to the behavior support needs of students. So, and I know I'm going to pass it off to some of my colleagues to talk about what is being done out of the Student Services Office.
Good evening. So I'm Timothy Hips. I'm an instructor. Is enhancing our multi-tier systems of support. Multi-tier systems of support, or MTSS, is a nationally adapted framework for providing all students with the appropriate levels of services and supports that will help them meet their full potential. Even though at the forefront of that is high quality academic instruction and intervention, we recognize that a child who receives well-rounded support in terms of attendance, behavior, mental health, and especially social and emotional learning is a child that is far more positively impacted when it comes to meeting their full potential. And so with that, what we're doing is we're developing a comprehensive plan that will guide us in delivering those services. This plan is not about adapting necessarily new services. It's about aligning the services and supports that we already have so that we're far more connected and comprehensive in delivering them. In addition to that, we're bringing some more tools to our student information system, which is Synergy. That component is called Synergy MTSS. And of many things that will allow us to do, it will allow us to document and name and share and evaluate MTSS intervention plans for students. It will also allow us to, or allow teachers to keep record, document concerns they have around behavior, tie some of those behavior concerns back to social and emotional learning competencies. So that they're looking at those misbehaviors as not so much bad behavior, but more so gaps in their social and emotional learning. And so that's another component that we'll have that will be able to allow parents to be able to see some of these concerns and observations in parent view. Lastly, the other thing that we'll be doing is developing a manual for that support so that schools, teachers, administrators, professional school counselors have a more comprehensive, more understood roadmap for delivering those multi-tier systems of supports for students, not just in academics, but also in behavior, attendance, social and emotional learning, and mental health as well.
All right, Mr. Hip. So that was perfect. What I want our team to do now is we've got some context around the issues connected to socio emotional well-being and PGCPS. If we could go back to the framing slide that has the question that has the dilemma on it. And then we will connect back with more information that the team has to share as you all are responding to the questions. So what we're really focused on is what strategy should PGCPS consider to address the socio-emotional and behavior needs of students with disabilities. So now we have a moment to begin responding to some of the questions that you all had. So I'm going to read a few of them that came up while the presenters were presenting. They'll respond to them as succinctly as they can. We're going to put about 20 minutes on the clock for this. We might not take all the time. We might need all the time. And then we're going to move into some open discussion and feedback from you all. So one of the questions that came from Teresa Smith earlier was, are informal removals tracked? And what are the implications to the infraction counts? I like this question. This is a really well-framed question because it's not talking about my specific child, even though maybe my child was the one who was removed, right? So it's opening it up to a broader issue and then seeking input from the team. So who would like to take that one?
I can start on that one. In terms of informal removals, I'm going to assume before I answer this question, I'm going to let you know the mindset by which I'm answering this question. I'm assuming that you mean that the child was sent home or picked up or told to stay home and it wasn't an official suspension. So that I'm answering the question from that standpoint. If I'm wrong, please correct me if that's not what you meant by informal removals. And my answer, and I would say, Liz, you can probably chime in here. My answer is no, they're not tracked unless the school is keeping track. Because it is informal. It wasn't written up as a suspension. It wasn't put into our student information system. So those things are not tracked other than maybe attendance. And I'm not sure, Liz, did you want to add on to that?
I would, and I echo your thought around that. Removals should be documented. Students should have a reason documented as to why they're being removed. Parents should be contacted and documentation provided. Our student information system is the official way of keeping data that is relative to each and every student. And so if a student's behavior has reached the level in which an administrator believes that removal is necessary, that should be documented and become a part of a student's record. What we fear with an informal removal is whether policies and procedures are followed and whether interventions are, whether we are executing interventions for students. And so that would be a concern for any informal removal of a student. And so that's my response around that, just really echoing what Michelle said. If it is informal and it is not tracked, and that therefore it is not documented, we have no way of referring back to those things as a matter of record. And they also do not, cannot become a part of a student's functional behavioral assessment or behavioral intervention plan, because we do not have the evidence nor the artifact that it occurred.
All right, so I'm assuming there will be more about this particular topic. Thank you all for jumping in. When we get to the recommendations, when you give us your feedback around what you think should happen next. Another question from Rob Malone was, do we interview students a week or two after behavioral incidents to learn and dissect what happened and to provide coaching in case a small trigger occurs? Team. Michelle Tucker, you're on mute if you're speaking to us.
Okay, yeah. So I would say I'll start off, and I'm gonna kick it to Liz to speak to what the professional school counselors do if that incident ends up in a suspension. The guidance that we provide is not to wait a week or two. We debrief with the student and the staff once there has been de-escalation. So once the emotion and energy out of that that incident has come down, we want to debrief with that student as soon as possible so that we can find out what's going on and come up with strategies both from the student standpoint and from the staff standpoint to improve situations in the future. If there is an incident that results in a suspension, then there is a debriefing process that occurs, and I'll let Liz speak to that.
That was where I was headed. A couple of years ago, we implemented something new, and that is when a student is suspended out of school, should their behavior rise to that level, when they come back, our mental health clinicians and our school counselors are having uniform conversations. So there is a template, there is a guided level of questions that were developed so that we could understand what occurred with the student, what they could have done better to help coach them to really think through some better decision making, but to also see if there are other antecedents to their behavior, if they have been bullied, if they academically are on course, if there are concerns with other students and their peers, if there is an issue at home, if they have particular needs that may be a barrier that they are responding to. So there's a document that counselors are completing when they are leading this type of discussion with students. But the idea really is to debrief with the student when behavioral issues occur. They really should be seeing a counselor or a mental health clinician to really talk through what happened so that those behaviors do not continue to occur or repeat. and that we really help build a student's capacity with the tools in order to respond or to express their emotions or to make better decisions.
Okay, thank you for that. So I'm moving around trying to get as many voices in. And Teresa Smith, I see you have a few questions. So I'll cycle back to your second ones in a moment. I want to jump to the bottom of the chat where Ebony said, why is there no longer an appeals process for short-term suspensions?
Parents can still appeal a short-term suspension, be it most of the time they are appealing after the student has returned. If a student has been suspended out of school 1 day or 2 days, usually that's not enough time to appeal prior to the suspension beginning, but you can still appeal to the pupil personnel worker in your building, assigned to your building, to have your appeal and your concern heard, and a decision will be rendered back to the school after the decision has been rendered.
Okay, thank you for that, Dr. Faison. And we're getting some more feedback around some implications for the student handbook and making sure that
Absolutely.
there's consistency in the messaging. So we want to note that. And Ebony, we're going to ask you to come back in when we get to our discussion if you feel comfortable doing so. There's this question that I'm really interested in hearing the answer to from Samantha. And essentially, she's saying that parents should document when informal suspensions or removals occur, informal. And so what's the follow-up if we know that schools are engaged in this practice? So is there a story about a time when we discovered that this issue was taking place, and what was the resolution?
So I think every parent should know the throughway when it comes to having a concern identified. If there is an instance where you have seen that your child has been removed informally, I think a conversation with the principal, and then every principal has an instructional director that they also are accountable to. And if you are not satisfied or your needs are not met through the instructional director, then every instructional director has an area associate superintendent. If your child is in a school for elementary, there's an area 1 director, middle school, area 2, and charter schools, and then area 3 is for our high schools. And so there are layers where your concerns can be met. If you feel an administrator has removed your student informally and it is not documented, I would at first ask the administrator to do so, and then take your concerns to the next level if you feel your concerns have not been met.
Thank you so much. So the instructional director, that person is the direct supervisor of the principal. So the principal's boss would be the instructional director, and the area office is where all those folks work. So there are 3 of them depending on the level. And I want to go back to, and let me slow down a little bit because I know that our translators are working very hard. So my apologies. Let me let them catch up. Okay, so there is a question from Teresa Smith, and I think it's a multi-pronged question. Why is physical restraints grossly higher at the elementary level? And what is the outlier between this grade level and the other 2? So that's the first part of the question. And I'm actually going to leave that one there because the next question, Teresa, has some acronyms in it, and I don't want to get it wrong. And I want to make sure we're clear about what you're talking about. So let's take the first question around physical restraints, and then we will come back to the second one.
So there are a couple things going on with that data point. Developmentally at the elementary level and below, students act out more with their bodies. When we start to see a shift in those behaviors as they get older, then the acting out becomes more verbal as opposed to physical. So when students are acting out with their bodies in a way that there is imminent serious physical harm to them or themselves, some of those verbal de-escalation skills that we could use, say, with an older student, aren't as effective with the younger students. So that is why we do see more physical restraints, and that's kind of consistent across the board in terms of our students with disabilities, and in terms of why we see more at the elementary level as opposed to the other two grade levels. And I did say it was two-pronged. So one was I spoke to it, the developmental levels of the students, and then just the skill set ends up shifting in terms of being physical acting out versus verbally acting out.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And now I know the language for the first acronym in Teresa's question. I wanted to make sure I had it right. So there is a disconnect when conducting a functional behavioral assessment and implementing a behavior improvement plan after behaviors have been identified in the IEP. What is the disconnect? Is it training? Is it consent? And how is the concern being addressed with school teams? Because she feels like the numbers should better align. So anything that you could speak to in that question?
So with the functional behavioral assessment, and we do talk about this in training. So I'm not sure if it's a training disconnect, but the disconnect between the functional behavioral assessment and the actual implementation of the behavior intervention plan, the documents are paper. So sometimes teams go through the process of, doing the assessment, coming up with the plan, but then the disconnect may come with the team that created the plan actually communicating those strategies, and the training, I would say, will maybe at the schoolhouse level, because are not necessarily bringing the teams together, or bringing the stakeholders inside the school building together to train on what's in that student's functional behavioral assessment so that they understand how to implement those strategies, because it's not just one person implementing the strategies for that behavior intervention plan to be effective. So some of the concern is being addressed with training, some of it's being addressed with coaching. In terms of at the schoolhouse level, we have been doing a lot with working with teams with their data collection tools, et cetera, so that we can impact those numbers. We actually just revamped and relaunched our functional behavioral assessment, behavior intervention plan training with a new module last month, to taking some of these considerations once we saw our data this year, that we wanted to immediately put some differences in our training module into effect so that we could try to impact those numbers.
Thank you so much. And there's one question that I don't see it anymore. I must have lost it, but so I'm going to paraphrase it. And I think the question was talking about implicit bias when people are deciding to discipline or reprimand children. And when I think about implicit bias, it could be because of a student's race, what we assume about the child's socioeconomic status, the school that the child goes to, any number of those things, including language. So sometimes we might unfairly interact with children or treat them unfairly because of biases that we have. And I think there was a question around, do we do training around that? So if I didn't get the question right, I apologize. If someone sees it and can correct me, go ahead and do so now. And then I'll let the team respond. Or gender. Thank you, Samantha.
I'll just start off by saying every year our employees must complete a training around bias at the beginning of the school year. And it really helps us to be reflective, number one, and introspective, and really take an account of the way that we number one, that we may have an implicit bias or a bias that is in our unconscious and counters what we think we believe and value. And so it is a way at the beginning of the school year for us to really know and to measure for this. Do we have lots to continue to learn? Yes, because in the day-to-day, we still need to have that lens in on what we do, and to have that to help us to really be equitable and to treat students through the understanding of of culture and to get to know students better and have a relationship with them. I think there probably is still room for us to grow and for us to continue to self-monitor what we do as it relates to students. I think when a student feels that he or she has been unfairly treated, then there are measures for students and or parents to take when they feel that these biases have gotten in the way of their child's education or the resources a child was or was not provided, or a process that was or was not followed based on any of those cultural things. And so once those things are addressed, the intended goal is for all of our students to be treated equitably and to be given the resources and services that they rightly deserve without discrimination of our own implicit biases.
Can I add to that? And if I leave something out,
Please do.
Michelle, let me know. In addition to that, even our substitute teachers during their onboarding process, they are required to sit for a 90-minute classroom management behavior understanding training, in which they, one, learn not to take behaviors personal, but a big component of that training is implicit bias, and understanding how gender, race, class, and even generational and age divides might drive how we interpret behavior. And that is a requirement for all of our substitutes before they step into a classroom. So I just wanted to add that even our substitutes are receiving implicit bias training when it comes to understanding behavior.
Yeah, so you didn't leave anything out, Tim. That continues to be the case. And in addition, I would say the work of David Reese's office each year with helping to educate school staff, all school staff, by focusing on a different group each year, that we increase the knowledge of all staff across the district so that we can combat that bias. So, David, I hear you being humble and not answering any questions, but your office is definitely helping us to address those concerns as well.
Thank you. I'm trying to be very neutral here. What I will say is that Glinda wrote something in the chat around the school-based equity lead. So we have people in each school who are responsible for turnkey professional learning to staff around issues. And we focus on students with disabilities this year and looking at these counter narratives, and implicit bias is a part of that. But to get to Teresa's question around how we can be more objective, I would strongly feel that if a parent walked into a school in Prince George's County and said, I know you all have been doing work around bias, might bias be playing out in this interaction with my child? My hope is that you would have an administrative team or teachers who will be able to hear your concern and take the temperature down a bit and engage around what might be happening. If you find when you do that, that you're not getting resolution, then you can email me at david.reese, R-E-A-S-E, at pgcps.org. And then we can think about how to problem solve to make sure that we are continuing not just the training, but the follow-up and setting the expectation. Because doing the training is one thing, but really keeping it at the forefront is going to require that partnership that I was speaking about earlier, where you're coming to us and we're being responsive to you. Were there any questions from the chat that I missed before we get into a part where we're going to be quiet and let our families and caregivers speak to us? If I missed your question, please accept my apology. I'm not trying to skip anything. I'm just trying to multitask. So we're now going to go to the part of the presentation where the presenters are going to listen now to the families giving us their feedback around actions you think we should take as a system to resolve the dilemma. And so you may feel free to come off of, raise your hand and we'll call you to come off of mute so that you can speak. If you're somebody who is speaking Spanish, we will make sure that your translated comment, or you can speak in Spanish to the group, is heard. And you can also type things in the chat. So the floor is open. What should PGCPS do to get better? Or what do you wish we would have done differently to improve the specific situation that you're not happy about? And Teresa, come on off mute and thank you for sharing.
Good evening. I don't want this to be the Teresa show.
It's
um,
okay.
all right. So just quickly, one, thank you for doing this evening, and all of the information that has been shared. It has been very fruitful. When it comes to the training, I don't know if you guys already do this, but it would be good to know whether or not you guys assess if there was if the staff gained the information that was being taught, however that can be obtained, because it's one thing to constantly teach, but if the staff is not really absorbing the information, we're still going to be at step one. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there.
Thank you for that suggestion. And what I want to model right now is we're not being defensive and saying, oh, we do collect that data, right? I'm just listening to what you said. We're taking it to advisement, and then we're going to reflect back at the end. So thank you, Teresa, for starting us off. Other thoughts and suggestions?
Hi, I have a question.
Yes.
I understand that right now, the amount of teachers is decreasing and teachers may feel a little overwhelmed with work. So I just wanted to ask, what are you doing to ensure that um this does not affect the children, and that because teachers may be overwhelmed, how do you deal with them not letting that affect their support with children?
I appreciate your question. And and you don't have to answer this, but if you have a thought about what you would like to see happen in response to your question, feel free to let us know. And if others in the room have a response to the question, you can respond as a family, and the system is still listening.
Hi,
Yep.
everyone. This is Samantha. I was thinking, I think that's a great question. And Teresa's um, question. I was thinking, like, where are we at on like a 4-day school week or something, just to kind of, because I feel like I'm overwhelmed as a parent. I have 4 sons. I have 5 sons, but 4 have IEPs out of the 5. Right now, I currently have 3 that goes to PGCPS schools. 2 are in a French French immersion school, and then one is his the one that's in Imagine Lincoln is his speech delay and development is a little bit more severe, and the homework is the same as everyone else's homework, despite the fact that they have a speech delay and IEP. Basically, I'm expected to keep up the same level as all the other parents, even with children who don't have any disabilities. And I have twins that are in the same grade. So they're both, so I'm basically doing double what some parents are doing. And I do feel overwhelmed. And I was just wondering, I saw something about, the governor or some talking about, thinking about a 4-day work week. But I'm just wondering, is there a way that we could maybe start looking at it? Because we are in unprecedented times with Donald Trump being president and things like that. Is there a way we could start being more creative to look at how can we maybe have one day where we're at home remotely, or maybe just 4-day school week, or I don't know, I'm just throwing things out there just to kind of allow parents who are feeling overwhelmed, or even teachers, a chance to just kind of regroup, or, because I'm finding myself wanting to like not basically like call out once a week at least, just to kind of catch up on homework and projects. And I've seen other parents who say they turn in homework late regularly. We've had one school where Imagine Lincoln, where we actually had a meeting because of all the chronic absenteeism. And I feel like that's something that no one's really addressing, like why that chronic absenteeism is happening. And I think it's just a lot of parents feeling overwhelmed, or maybe just, feeling left behind, something along those lines.
Thank you. I wish I could play that comment for a whole lot of people in PGCPS, Samantha. So thank you for sharing it, and we're processing it. If you have other thoughts or recommendations around what we need to be considering in partnership based off of your experience, you can place items in the chat. You can come off of mute and speak. You can give kudos to people who you thought made really good points and you don't want to say anything, but just put a plus on it. You can do that as well.
Hello, everyone. This is Siobhan. I'm not sure if my name is popping up.
Yes.
So I wanted to announce myself. I just want to give kudos to my school and just the county for introducing therapy and into the school system. It's been very helpful and enlightening for myself, and I think for staff as well. And that really helps the social and emotional behavioral behaviors that you may see in students. What I think could use some improvement and development is as parents and staff are learning and developing the unique needs of each individual child, because they're all unique, there needs to be communication. And in the IEP meetings, it tends to be the general educator, but not the other parties. And so I've found that there are situations that may arise where communication of needs is not equally distributed, or the new developments are not communicated, so that we have situations where the student is not growing in their emotional development and behaviors. So that's my recommendation. Just
you,
strengthening
Siobhan.
communication amongst teachers and staff.
Thank you, Siobhan, for announcing yourself and giving the recommendation. I want to, as I'm going to call on Jamie for a moment, but I want to pause and give space for anybody from the deaf and hard of hearing community or from our non-English speaking community to have space to be able to ask a question. And there's no pressure, just giving space. Jamie, you'll be our final comment unless we hear from another group, and then we'll move to the reflection piece.
I was just going to echo what the last speaker had said about having therapists in the school. That's been really helpful for both of my children. And I was going to ask, do we have therapists in all of the schools now? And if not, I guess what percentage of schools have outside therapists in the schools?
That is a very good question that a team member might be able to respond to during the reflection portion, Jamie. But I just want to break protocol, but I'm not going to. So team members, I do see a question from Monica in the chat. If somebody could respond to her question around how long it takes for a school, the IEP evaluation, or for it to be modified, that would be great. So thank you for asking that question, Monica. And if it becomes a deeper question that we can't answer right now, there's a form that you can fill out, Monica, and we'll make sure we get more specific information to you. So what I would love to do right now is thank our community members for taking the time to share their recommendations and things we ought to be considering as a school district. We are now in the part of the presentation where each presenter, and I can't remember who they are now, Michelle, Liz, and Timothy, there could be some others, who are going to take a moment to reflect back on what's resonating with them around some potential, like what's coming up for them as they listen to our families and caregivers share their recommendations and ask their questions. Anyone who feels so moved can go first.
I'll start. I think what resonates with me first is maybe it was the first question around informal removals, and we train principals. They receive training every month. And there are a number of topics that we provide on an ongoing basis. And so I see that as a topic that needs to be revisited when it comes to the informal removal of our students when it comes to incidences or behaviors. So that I think is the first thing for me is, now that we've heard, how will we address this? If it has happened to one parent, is it possible that it has occurred someplace else? So for us to just address it with all principals at once, reminding them about the policy.
Thank you so much. And as you said that, I'm thinking, who else besides principals need to be made aware? Because there's leadership at all levels of the school. So thank you, Dr. Faison. And we can open the floor for either Timothy or Michelle.
But some things that resonated with me is when I think about the training, and we've begun this process, but I need to make sure that it's done for all of the behavior trainings we have, is one, to add that assessment piece that we've been adding them slowly to each of our training modules. So making sure that it's done quicker, so that at least by July 1, that all of our training modules have some type of assessment piece to it. In addition to, and this kind of goes along with the assessment, but it also goes along with the comment about communication that someone mentioned in terms of the needs and supports being communicated to all stakeholders. As I think about that disconnect with our functional behavioral assessment and behavior intervention plan implementation, is that there are also some look-fors that go along with our training, so that, what would this look like if this training, not just did I get the concepts and am able to pass the assessment as a participant, but then now what would this look like if I implemented in the school setting as trained? Those look for documents for each of our trainings, and more specifically for our FBA VIP training, making sure that communication of the strategies in that behavior intervention plan as being a part of that look for document or checklist for that training.
Thanks, Michelle. And Timothy, you're our last presenter who gets to officially comment.
I think just as an extension to what Michelle said, how can we better not only assess knowledge after trainings, but also assess the quality of application after trainings? And just also thinking about the question about the heavily weighted amount of restraints that went towards elementary children, and just thinking about whether or not the public is aware that we do evaluate when we suspend, pre-K to 2 students, that we do take into consideration whatever that behavior offense was. Was it an imminent threat to the child or someone else? I'm just really wondering if we're doing a good job in communicating to the families everything that we do in terms of taking into account implicit bias, uh, IEPs, that sort of thing. Just random reflections. Sorry.
Those are not random. They're your reflections. It's your time. There is no right or wrong. I'm actually going to take a moment as facilitator and take a facilitator's privilege to just thank everybody for their communication and being in a problem-solving space with us. I am stuck reflecting on so many things. One of them is, so you teach people and you have these trainings, what sticks and how do you know? And what does accountability for learning look like for adults? I am wondering about the connection to the last meeting, where when we bring families together in the IEP meeting, what data are we looking at when we talk about behavior and having real dialogue around what each student needs, what your child needs from staff to be their best? And I'm also reflecting on the fact that I spent about 3 hours in a 1-2, first and second grade self-contained autism class last week. And 10 of the students of the 14 were, I'm going to say, nonverbal. And I am not somebody with a special education background. And when I tell you the students are brilliant and communicating and advocating for themselves in ways that were mind-blowing, I can't even tell you how moving it was to just watch their brilliance at work. But the comment about parents feeling overwhelmed is resonating with me heavily, because I thought about, how am I, if this were my child and all this stuff is happening at school and I'm trying to reinforce things at home with all of the other things, how are we helping families manage all of that and support their children at home with what's happening at school? And I was overwhelmed. So that word overwhelmed is real. I appreciate the parents who have decided to exchange numbers publicly in the chat. We'll make sure that that part is not out there for the world to see in the recording. Thank you all for being a resource to one another. I do see other suggestions coming out in the chat. We're going to read them. I'm going to try to get us close to ending on time. And I want to transition to our next, who's next to take over and get us through our next steps.
I think Marcy's going to open up our survey for everyone to complete. As you can see, we take your input very seriously. And so the QR code here is up, and then Marcy's also going to put it in the chat. So if you could just take a moment as I'm going through the remaining slides and complete our survey from this evening, we would be very much appreciative. Our next step, so after tonight's town hall meeting, our SECAC board will send out the notes via the SECAC listserv. We also will send those notes out to everyone that registered this evening through our Family Support Center. Again, the input from the survey will be used to inform our next town hall meeting. And then all of the recommendations that have been collected, not only from this evening, but throughout the series of our town halls, will be shared in a final report from our SECAC board to PGCPS. We'd like to draw your attention to some upcoming SECAC meetings on April 29th. As part of our Parent Empowerment Conference series, we will be focused on autism and mental health awareness. And then on May 27th, our final town hall for the year will focus on how to build stronger partnerships between families and schools. Again, if you're interested in joining our SECAC board, please reach out to Ms. Janie Payne. Her email is provided here on this particular slide. So again, if you're interested in serving on our SECAC board, please reach out to Janie Payne. Again, our 14th annual Parent Empowerment Conference series is available here. It is a virtual conference series. Our theme this year is Stronger Together, Empowering Families of Children with Disabilities. We have a series that will start, that started on March 17th and will go all the way through May 1st. We also will have our 3rd annual Autism Summit this Saturday coming up on Saturday, March 29th from 8:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. And you can register to attend and join us. State Department of Education is currently conducting a parent survey. Again, we take your responses very seriously. Those results are shared with SECAC as we look to program for our next year, and also any specific training and follow-up that we're doing with our parents. So we encourage all of you to complete the survey. You should have been mailed a copy directly to your home, and then you'll begin to see schools providing you with the link as you attend IEP meetings and other meetings in your school. Again, we just want to remind you of steps to resolve any concerns that you may have, which is contacting step 1, your child's case manager. Every student with an IEP does have a case manager. The second step in the escalation process is to contact the principal. Step 3 is the area office. You heard Dr. Faison mention earlier that every school has an instructional director. The instructional director does supervise the principal. We also have our family support center, and then we have special education instructional specialists and compliance specialists are assigned to each school. We have given you the link, and Marcy will put that in the chat as well. Our central office resolution contact list that includes not only members from the Department of Special Education, but school health, transportation, school boundaries, and other offices. And then we just want to remind you that we do have a family support toolkit that has been released. I did share it in the chat earlier. Marcy will put it in one more time, but this gives you your one-stop shop of all things related to special ed processes, policies, resources, also links to external technical assistance bulletins from the Maryland State Department of Education and administrative procedures that are very helpful as you think about your student with a disability. But again, it is a one-stop shop of resources, timelines, et cetera, around the special ed process. And then again, we do have a parent survey that we encourage our families to complete after they attend the IEP meeting to really share their experiences about the process they have undergone at their child's school. We use this survey data. Each school gets it. If you complete a survey today at an IEP meeting, that data is immediately shared with the school. We have built systems and structures so schools get their data the moment you push submit. This data is definitely used to help inform the feedback and things that we're going to be doing as we work with our schools to really build stronger relationships with our families. So again, we encourage all of you as you attend your child's IEP meeting to complete the survey. And then we just want to wrap up, and I just want to echo some of the comments that David said in his facilitation this evening, that we appreciate your feedback. We appreciate the space where you are pushing us to think differently. Your recommendations are taking flight with us to really be reflective on the work that we want to do to continue to strive and improve outcomes for students with disabilities. Hearing your stories, hearing your concerns really helps shape us better as a district. So we just thank you for your attendance. We thank you for being here tonight and just sharing your feedback, your concerns, and your recommendations. To everyone, have a great evening. And spring break is almost around the corner. So please enjoy your spring break with your families. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.